It's never been easy to be a space game, has it? Regardless of which specific space game you're a fan of, chances are that one way or another over the years that game has met with controversy or had a load of problems. This arguably has never been as apparent as it is today with the events surrounding Kerbal Space Program 2, something we're going to talk about in just a moment. The game ultimately should be and can be considered a failure, but it's not the only one. There's a bunch of other space games out there that over the years all met ultimately with failure. I want to talk about many of these. They're all games that did have huge potential, but for one way or another ultimately either lost all that or just never lived to meet it. Also, if as you're watching this video you find you're enjoying it, please do consider liking and subscribing. Let's get to that first space game in the list. So, right up front, I want to preface that all the information here on Kerbal Space Program 2 is a summary of Shadowzone's excellent video on the controversy surrounding the game. Now, I don't make any personal claims as to the veracity of this information. I haven't actually personally verified it and would be unable to do so, but that said, my general feeling is that all of this does appear to be legitimate. Ultimately, Shadowzone is highly respected in the KSP community, and I urge you to check out his full video for yourselves and make up your own minds. His video is linked in the video description, and my thanks to him as well for putting his video together. Now, the journey of developing KSP2 has been marked by prolonged delays and significant challenges. Initially contracted by Take-Two Interactive to Uber Entertainment in 2017, the project was expected to be a simple revision of the original game with a budget of $10 million and a 2-year timeline. However, creative director Nate Simpson apparently had other ideas and envisioned a much more ambitious game featuring interstellar travel, colonies and multiplayer, all the things that had potential KSP2 players very excited. It was a vision then that, whilst exciting, far exceeded the initial budget and the initial timelines. Now, later, eventually, secrecy shrouded the entire project. Well, actually, that happened from start to finish, and this Shadowzone claims complicated the hiring process. Unable to disclose project details, the team mainly recruited junior engineers, many of whom were unfamiliar with the original KSP, and this lack of experienced developers ultimately hampered the progress of the game right from the very beginning. Now, technically, the decision to stick with the original game's codebase rather than adapting to a new engine like Unreal proved to be problematic, and this, to me, is really actually very shocking information. Many people knew right from the start that KSP1 does have some pretty poor code, and that was one of the reasons that so many people were excited for KSP2, a game built from the ground up and completely from scratch. And in fact, as far as I remember, many of the development videos actually hinted and even suggested that was the case. It was pointed out that the code was not designed for expanded features, particularly multiplayer. Efforts ultimately to refactor the code were met with resistance from management, so yeah, not only did they want them to use the original code but not refactor it, and this further really went ahead and delayed development. And as if all this wasn't enough, communication with the original KSP team was prohibited by the bosses over at Take-Two, and this had the effect of isolating the team and preventing them from leveraging prior knowledge of the game as well as the original team's experience. Now, there is an extensive timeline to all of this. I won't be able to go through all of that in this video because it's very detailed, but I will give you a brief overview. In 2019, Take-Two attempted to acquire Star Theory, but negotiations fell through, and many people do know about this. Consequently, Take-Two pulled the IP and offered positions to the development team at a new studio, which was to be called Intercept Games. However, only a few engineers transitioned, and this severely impacted the project's continuity. Over at Intercept Games, meanwhile, the project faced new challenges. The pandemic, which was just starting to appear around the world, added complications. Management's insistence on using old code continued to create further issues. Despite hiring domain experts, such as experts within the fields of space and orbital mechanics, all that sort of stuff, physics and whatnot, integration with KSP1 developers came too late to be fully effective. Compensation, meanwhile, at Intercept Games, the wages was below industry standards, and this led to difficulties in retaining key personnel. So yeah, not only was a difficult environment created, but the developers working there were offered very low wages. Now, ever since KSP2 was announced, the impression and expectation among the community, and certainly from me, was that the game would have a full release. After all, this is coming from a big, huge publisher. KSP 2, however, in the end entered early access, and this happened in February of 2023. The release itself was met with mixed to negative reviews due to performance issues and the lack of content. Internally, this led to tensions and a restructuring of the development team, and yes, the game did apparently have some very low sales, and we did see some very low numbers over there on Steam charts, often not exceeding just a few hundred players. On April 2024, just last month, it was unfortunately announced that Intercept Games offices would be closed, although to this date Take-Two as yet have not specifically admitted that Intercept Games has directly closed. This is all very, very odd stuff. But essentially the studio was closed or is closing as of June this year, but Take-Two are unwilling to actually admit to that for some reason. Or to put that another way, they're not being very clear about the entire situation. As of right now, the last tweet about the game was from a private division of the game's publishers, and they said that work on the game still continues, but obviously it would. The studio isn't going to close until June. As for the far future of the game, no one at the moment seems to know what that is actually going to be, and many people within the community now feel that to all intents and purposes, Kerbal Space Program 2 future development on it at least is now dead. So that's a very high-level overview of the entire situation. As you can tell, it is a game development that has been marked by many mistakes and a complete mess. For a full deep dive into all of that though, do check out Shadow Zone's video, which again is linked in the video description. Moving on to other space games which have met similar fates, we come to Jumpgate Evolution. And this was poised to be a groundbreaking sequel to the 2001 space simulation MMO Jumpgate. Announced by NetDevil in 2007, the game promised enhanced graphics, faster combat, and a richer array of features, capturing the excitement of both veteran players and newcomers to the genre. But in 2008, NetDevil was acquired by Gazillion Entertainment, a move that was expected to bolster the development of Jumpgate Evolution. However, this acquisition also introduced financial challenges and restructuring issues, which significantly impacted apparently the development timeline. Now, originally slated for a June 2009 release, the game faced multiple delays despite reaching a feature-complete state and undergoing internal testing. By 2011, NetDevil faced severe layoffs, and this led to the effective shuttering of the studio. These layoffs, compounded by Gazillion Entertainment struggles, halted the development of Jumpgate Evolution. Despite the game never officially launching, its story didn't end there. In 2019, hopes were briefly rekindled with the announcement of Warp Nexus, a spiritual successor by some of the original developers, although updates on this project have been sparse ever since. And as of today, no additional information is known about that project. Now, as we work further through this video, you'll notice that Jumpgate Evolution is yet another example of a dedicated fanbase that was let down by the way things ultimately played out. And this is the same story which infamously repeats with Star Wars Galaxies. This was a very popular game, one I personally enjoyed very much myself, a massively multiplayer online role-play game. It launched all the way back in 2003, and it offered fans of Star Wars a chance to exist and play in, well, the Star Wars universe. Now, Star Wars Galaxy was initially celebrated for its deep player engagement and its rich features. It was perhaps one of arguably the best MMOs of the time. Players could build homes, form cities, and participate in dynamic crafting systems that really created a player-driven economy. The game offered a whole variety of different professions, whether you wanted to be involved in combat roles or just simply be an entertainer. All of this was possible, and it really did make for a cohesive and great community. However, the cracks started to appear in 2005 with the combat upgrade. Now, this was introduced to simplify the combat mechanics, which I don't really think many people had a problem with. The game was very good, but it was a change that received mixed reactions from the player base. The real controversy, though, hit a little bit later in the same year, November 2005, with the new game enhancements, otherwise known as NGE. The NGE drastically altered the game by reducing the number of professions from 34 all the way down to 9, and allowing players to start as the iconic characters such as the Jedi, and the Jedi was something that had to be unlocked before that. It was very much a rarity to even see a Jedi, much less be one. Now, these changes were aimed at attracting new players, but ended up alienating many loyal fans, leading to a significant drop in subscriptions because, yes, back then many MMOs were subscription-driven. Now, despite efforts to revive player interest with expansions such as Jump to Lightspeed and Rage of the Wookiees, I love that name, the game's player base continued to dwindle. The decision to shut down Star Wars Galaxies unfortunately came in 2011, so this is a really long decline, all the way from 2005 to 2011. Some people perhaps would consider that a success, but in the end, the golden age of Star Wars Galaxy lasted just 2 years. In the end, it wasn't just the NGE that led to the closure of Star Wars, but a few other things as well, which included the decline in subscriptions and competition from BioWare's Star Wars The Old Republic. Now, Star Wars Galaxies left a lasting impact on the MMO genre. It's a very good game that's fondly remembered by many people even to this day, with many complex systems that were very much enjoyed. Now, even after its closure, even to this day, if you still want to play the game, you can do so through some private servers like the Star Wars Galaxies EMU or SWG EMU. Of course, it does feel very dated in this modern era, but it still has a lot of features that are great for its time, and some which, well, have simply never been replicated. And now we come to yet another space game. This one is called Earth and Beyond. I'm not sure how many of you will personally remember this one, but do let me know in the comments section, because, yeah, it'll very much be showing your age. Now, Earth and Beyond was a space-themed MMO, another one, and it was developed by Westwood Studios, famous, of course, for Command & Conquer. They started this journey to develop the game in 1998. It was announced in 2001 and officially launched in September 2002. The game introduced a unique 3-part experience system focused on trade, exploration and combat, aiming to carve its niche in the at the time growing MMO market. And this was, of course, an MMO market riding off the back of Ultima Online and EverQuest at the time, 2 games which really did set the trend on fire. Now, set in the vast galaxy, Earth and Beyond featured 3 factions and 9 professions, though only 6 were available at launch. Players could engage in trade, exploration and combat, with random mission generation and push missions, so-called push missions, which added to layers of engagement. Now, despite these innovative features, which were very much innovative for the time, and unfortunately the game struggled to build a strong community. And yes, at the time, a space-based MMO was pretty much unique. Everyone else adopted for the fantasy genre, although not too long after this, EVE Online did make an appearance to a great success. Anyway, one of the problems often cited with Earth and Beyond was the extensive travel times, and this meant that players would often feel isolated, even in an online world. Now, initially, Earth and Beyond garnered a dedicated following, but it struggled to compete with contemporary MMOs like EverQuest and Ultima Online. Understandably, they had very big audiences at the time. Now, the game's unique setting and gameplay mechanics were appreciated by its niche audience, yet the limitations in class availability and player isolation really did hinder the game ever getting a broader appeal. In the end, there were other factors at play here. Some of the game's decline was in the end caused by Westwood Studios transitioning over post-acquisition by Electronic Arts by EA, which in turn had an effect on ongoing support of the game. By early 2004, subscriber numbers dwindled to around 20,000 to 25,000, and in March 2004, EA announced the game's shutdown, and it officially closed in September 2004. Now, despite its brief lifespan, Earth and Beyond did leave a lasting mark, and it will be well remembered from people who were around at the time, people of a certain age. Now, Black Prophecy is another space game that goes a little ways back in time, although nowhere near back to 2001. Instead, this one goes back to about 2011. So Black Prophecy was another space combat MMO. It launched in March 2011, and despite its promising start, the game's journey was as turbulent as, well, the interstellar battles that it depicted. Now, development began in late 2006 with a team of around about 50 people. Initially, the studio aimed for a 2009 release, but financial troubles in 2008 delayed the project. Undeterred, the studio pressed on. Black Prophecy features 3D real-time space combat, with players joining one of 2 factions, the technologically advanced TIE or the genetically superior Genides. Players embarked on various missions to gain experience and upgrade their ships. and the game's modular ship design and crafting system added depth, though the latter's reliance on randomness could certainly be something that, well, seemed frustrating. Now, operating on a freemium model that's free to play, something which in 2011 was just starting to make an appearance, the game offered a premium shop for purchasing items to expedite progress. Now, despite a Moby score of 7.2 and average critic score of 72%, Black Prophecy has struggled to maintain its player base. And whilst players praised the game's visuals and the combat mechanics, they did nonetheless criticise the repetitive missions and complex crafting system. In the end, the game had a very swift decline. In August of 2012, financial issues led to the announcement of Black Prophecy's shutdown. The servers went dark on September 2012, and the combination of financial instability, fierce competition in the MMO market, and gameplay elements that just failed to retain player interest all collectively led to the game's downfall. So there we have it, a list of space games that were all either excellent or had excellent potential but never met it. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all the space games that met with failure. They aren't simply the ones that initially came to mind. And if you do have any other examples, then well, let me know in the comment section, because I'd really like to know about them and may cover them in the future. At any rate, thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. It was a little bit longer than usual, and if you're still interested in watching another video, why not check out the one on the screen right here. I'll catch you all next time. Take care.